Hey everyone, welcome to my review of RefRain Prism Memories. Try and say that 4 times fast. It is a game that was recommended to me by a member of my Discord, Dingo. He was really digging this game, and so with his endorsement I decided to check it out. So shoutouts to Dingo. I'll leave a link to his YouTube channel in the description. He did a 1cc of RefRain if you want to check that out. So I guess to begin with, I should give full disclosure. This is the first game I was ever able to get a review copy for. So shoutouts to Dejika, that was really cool of them for doing that. It's not like I have a huge presence or anything like that, so it was really cool of them to do that. With that said though, I don't plan on going easy on the game or anything like that. At this point, my integrity is literally the only thing I have. I'm not making much dollar bills on these reviews, so I don't plan to compromise that in any way. So, speaking of integrity and pointing out some errors, you'll notice in the first few seconds here of the game that there's some serious slowdown in the beginning stage. The funny thing is that on my beast of a gaming PC, this slowdown doesn't occur, but on my somewhat powerful gaming laptop, which is what I use to record and play the game on, it was slowing down, I think, way more than it should be, considering the type of game it is and the visual complexity of it. I mean, I'm able to run Metal Gear Solid 5 on this laptop pretty easily, so I think there's a little bit of optimization that could be done for sure. Because one of the benefits of indie shmups and shmups in general is that they're supposed to be accessible to lower hardware spec, or lower spec hardware, and not something you need to go out and buy a new PC to play. So definitely something I think that could be improved on. It's not horrible. The slowdown only occurs in a few places, but oh, there's Dingo, speaking of him. So I guess to get into the game review proper, my first criticism that just has to be addressed is this stage here, stage 1. The first time you play RefRain, there's nothing really wrong with stage 1. You're kind of just figuring out all the mechanics and trying out the beams, the missiles, all the different, things the game has to offer. But by the 5th or 6th time you play the game, this is when stage 1 starts to become really weak, because look at me here. I'm literally sitting and holding laser for about 30 seconds. The first stage is too handholdy, it's too introductory. It's just floating around and holding laser. You're not really in any danger until the boss. I understand the idea of having an introductory stage, but I think they either should have ramped it up a little bit, or they should have cut it down the lengthwise, got rid of the second half of the stage, or just cut the stage altogether, because this game does have a tutorial. So it's not like you need stage 1 to teach the game, because it does have a built-in tutorial mode that teaches you all the mechanics, which is really helpful and points to the game for doing that, because it does have some rather unique mechanics that I guess I could get into explaining now. So the first typical mechanic of the game is that it has a rapid shot and a concentrated shot, just like in cave games, Donpachi. And if you're playing this ship specifically, the green ship, it has a concentrated laser, just like Donpachi. However, what is unique about this ship is that these options here on the sides actually can be controlled. They can be turned wider or they can be turned more narrow. So that's really cool. It gives you some customization towards your rapid shot. And there are points in the game where you're going to want to turn those options in different ways, so it's not a useless or trivial feature by any means. I think the most unique aspect of this game is we need to talk about its alternate shot. For the life of me, I cannot remember the acronym. It's kind of an awkward one, but I think it's MEDS, something like that. But basically what is it? It's an alternate shot. If you've ever played Esperade, it's very similar to the alternate shot in Esperade. How each ship type has a different style of alternate shot. But what's unique about this game is that your alternate shot has a meter, like a super meter in fighting games. And based on how much meter you have, you can do different things with your alternate shot. So more often than not with the green ship, I just use the level 1 super, I guess you could call it, where you just shoot those missiles. Now what's great about those missiles is not only do they damage armored enemies, they also cancel bullets, as you can see there. So they can be used both offensively and defensively, which is really nice. Another aspect of the super system that I actually didn't realize was a thing until after I initially recorded my first review of this game, and then had to go back and redo it because I learned about this mechanic and didn't talk about it. But based on the number of times you hit the alternate fire button, you get a different level of super. So if you hit it once, you get the level 1 super, which is just the missiles. But if you hit it twice, you get an upgraded one that uses 2 meters. Hit it 3 times, you get another upgraded one that uses 3 meters. And that goes on to 4 and 5. I don't think there's a 6th one. I'm pretty sure 4 might be the limit, maybe 5. I'm pretty sure it's 4 actually. 4 is the max. And you get a really cool effect where your anime girl appears on screen and you basically blow up the screen with a bunch of bullets. Kind of like a hyper type style of attack. So looking at the enemy design, I think a weakness that you're going to see throughout the game is that all of the bosses in this game are geometric shapes with a satellite around them. And visually, if you lined them up without their attacks, I would really be challenged to really struggle to tell you which one is which one belongs to which stage. So I think that's something that could have been improved on. It's just, some variety and complexity in the enemy designs. Because we'll also get to a point where there's enemies that are literally just squares. So, but to talk about some, here they are, see, you're just fighting squares and circles. Which kind of goes with the aesthetic of the game, I understand that, but at the same time, when you look at these gorgeous backgrounds, how dynamic they are and how interesting they are, I think some extra attention could have been spent towards the enemies themselves. The bullets though, the bullets in this game are top notch as far as the way they look, the way they behave, how unique they are. RefRain is definitely a game, if you see a screenshot of it, you'll instantly recognize it. You'll instantly say, oh, that's RefRain. The bullets, the backgrounds, they're just very unique and they stand out. Whereas you take a lot of shmups and you just take a snapshot of one frame, and you can't look at the player sprite though, right? Because that's usually pretty unique. But everything else in the game, you might be hard pressed. So speaking of performance issues, I want to get to this while it's still on screen. This section where it's hella slowed down here, and we're going at 30 frames a second, that is not how the game plays on my high spec PC. But on this medium spec PC, I'm getting some serious slowdown in that section. It's convenient for me, but I also feel like, again, it really shouldn't be happening on a PC as powerful as this one is. I mean, what is driving so much, what's pushing my PC so hard about these visuals? Maybe the backgrounds? I'm not sure what it could be. So speaking of the backgrounds, I think one huge plus in this game's visual design is how the backgrounds are unique. Each stage has a unique background, but they also fit together and create a story. And I love games that do that, especially shmups. They don't try and load you down with crappy cutscenes and things like that. Instead, they tell their story through the visuals, through the backgrounds, through the transitions. And this game does excellent. I have never in my life researched what the story of this game is about. That's not something I really care about that much. but I could probably guess that the story has something to do with your pilot either being in a VR simulation or diving into a computer like the Matrix and battling this AI from hell. Everything about this game visually screams, artificial intelligence, virtual reality. It's really cool. Reminds me of Metal Gear Solid 2 visually. Even like if you look in the left and right borders with the text, that's really reminiscent of Metal Gear Solid 2. This stage overall has the most slowdown. Even the final stage doesn't have as much as this one. And I do suspect it might be the backgrounds that's causing all the slowdown. I mean, of course the enemies are, but why is it happening on this level and not another one where, there's arguably more enemies on the later levels? I think it has to do with this insanely awesome background. I mean, look at it. It's scrolling, it has transparency, it's got all these buildings type things. Excellent work on the backgrounds in this game, top-notch work. It actually makes a lot of games that I consider to have pretty cool, interesting backgrounds, like a lot of the Toho shmups, kind of makes them look a little lazy and half-hearted in comparison. So, total kudos for that. So, speaking of, I spoke about the bullet design, but I guess I should also talk about the beam design, which is unique in this game. I don't think I've played another shmup quite like this, where you're getting hit with like strobe disco beams, I guess I like to describe them as. They're like 80s Tron style beams. They look awesome, they're really fun to dodge, and this overall, the hit scan effect that the bosses have, where you'll go into a bullet time for just a few seconds and it kind of traces out where the bullets are going to come in. That is excellent. It adds a cinematic flair to the game. It also adds some just fun factor. Makes you feel awesome when you dodge those. Even though they're not necessarily that hard to dodge, just the cinematic quality of them is excellent game design. So this stage of all the stages seems to be the weirdest as far as its visual design. I kind of get the vibe it's going for is this is a desert, but it's a simulated desert. Like the computer is trying to trick you into thinking you're out in space or out on some planet, when really you're in a simulated computer environment. So this portion right here of the game where it has the ship entering this elevator, that reminds me a lot of Ikaruga, and I really appreciate when shmups have that little extra cinematic design. Not like long drawn out sequences or cutscenes, but just these brief interludes where you can just take a quick breath and just feel like, yeah, this game's awesome, and really enjoy the visuals for just a second or two. I think that's really well done in this game, and I think other shmups should look into doing that. I think it should be more common than it is. I mean, arguably the most popular shmup, Ikaruga, has those visual elements that are, and Radiant Silvergun's the same way. And I think they appeal to casual players especially. I've just noticed that a lot of like casual reviews of shmups and indie shmups especially, they tend to favor the ones that have a unique visual design. Whether or not that's important is, I guess, a topic for this review, but because one thing I can say is, on top of its unique visuals, RefRain has excellent gameplay, excellent game design. Like this section right here is a great example of that. So up until this point in the game, you actually could have played through the entire thing without knowing about your missiles or your secondary shots. You could have just relied on your lasers and rapid shots. But this is the section of the game where it forces you to recognize how your super meter works. That's not what it's called, but that's what I'll call it. How your super meter works, how your gauge works. Because you need it in order to defeat those enemies. They're impervious to regular shots. This boss is the same way. He's completely, it's like a satellite, is impervious to your regular shots. So the strategy is you're actually supposed to be killing these smaller enemies here and comboing them to gain meter to damage the enemy, the boss. That is a really cool concept that I think could be explored in other shmups. Imagine playing a cave style shmup where you needed, in order to damage a boss, you had to do a bunch of chaining during the boss fight of these smaller enemies. That would be really fun. And so this game forces you to kind of do that, and I think that's a good idea. So here we go into the third boss. This is a boss that I always remember from a gameplay perspective, but again, look at the actual sprite, or whatever you call it, model of the boss. Again, it's just a satellite, a circle satellite. I think a little bit of work could have been done to distinguish them a little more, but I won't focus on that anymore. I've already talked about it enough. It's really interesting how those green bullets act, where they will fly and form a circle around you in that way. Because as someone who's done some experimenting, you could say at least, with shmup design, creating shmup AI, creating enemy patterns and things like that, I'm trying to think how exactly you would program those bullets to fly in the way they do. Unless the guy individually scripted each and every bullet. If he did that, that is insane. I don't think that can't be what's going on, but if he really did that, that is insane. Definitely some high quality programming work went into this game, for sure. It feels like I should have mentioned this earlier. RefRain is a Doujin shmup that actually has its roots. You can still get the Doujin version of it on Nico blog. I would personally recommend getting the Steam version. For one, because it has English settings, so you can, and an English tutorial, that's really helpful. But also, I just think the UI is greatly improved. I can't compare gameplay differences between the two because whenever I tried to play the Doujin version, the Japanese text, I couldn't figure out how to launch things correctly and configure things correctly, so I was only able to play the tutorial mode, and then I was stuck inside the tutorial mode because I couldn't read the instructions and it wouldn't let me proceed. So here we go, the final boss, or perhaps the final boss of the game. Now earlier I mentioned how I wasn't too happy about the boss designs just being satellites or circles, but I'm willing to give this final boss a pass because the circle, this glowing blue circle, to me is really reminiscent of the red eye in 2001: A Space Odyssey, HAL. I don't know if any of you guys have seen that, but basically it's the computer on the ship, and its glowing red eye kind of becomes this menacing symbol throughout the movie. So I think this glowing blue eye is kind of like a reference to that, so I think it's pretty fitting. Because again, the vibe of this game is you're within some kind of computer system or fighting some kind of AI of some sort. I remember sitting back in this section thinking, wow, this is an easy final boss. Especially if you know how to abuse the missiles. Because what I'm doing is I'm basically building enough meter, and then by the time I get into any sort of danger, I just missile out of it. But I'm able to build meter quick enough to where I can just rinse and repeat. I don't know why I died there. I literally just flew into the enemy bullet. That's not a mistake I typically make when playing these games, but Maybe I think I was tired at that point and I just flew straight into an enemy bullet. I think the bullet designs and pattern designs of this game are extremely hypnotic and eye-catching. That's for sure. Like, it gets when you played back in the day, I don't know if it still does, Windows Media Player, and you could turn on those crazy effects, those like visual hypnotic effects as you listen to music. It kind of reminds me of that a little bit, the way it looks. So one nice touch about about the super missiles is that they launch from the back of your ship, so in that pattern I could use them to defend behind me, not just in front of me. Which in shmups is a rare feature. Usually you're extremely vulnerable from the back in the shmup, so I think that was a helpful addition for sure. So here we go. You thought you had defeated the final boss, but that was just Form 1. Here's Form 2. And I'm going to give Form 2 a pass because I like the giant headdress. It's memorable. I could remember this enemy design. Speaking of memorable designs, the game has these pink cross bullets. I love those. Definitely the standout bullet of this game. If I were to remember one, I'd always remember the pink crosses. So I didn't notice it the first time I played, but the background, you know how the background shifts between the phases? This one here is like a winding staircase, like you're winding down a set of stairs. And if you just watch the background and not the foreground, it can actually kind of make you a little dizzy. Kind of messes with your perspective, that's for sure. I think this is a kind of twist on a classic pattern, the spinning eye of the storm. That was in Denmark Unlimited 3. I was talking about that. This one has a little bit of a variation on that, where you're having a ring within a ring. So it's a lot of fun. Up to this point, I'm still in my first credit, so I was thinking, okay, just make it through 3 more patterns and I have the 1cc, that'll be awesome. When I first started this series, I was debating whether or not I should 1cc every single game I review. And the reason I decided against it isn't because I don't think I could do it. I honestly think I could. It's more of a matter of commitment, where there's going to be certain games, not RefRain, not Denmark Unlimited 3, but there's going to be some certain games coming up that I'm going to be reviewing that probably aren't going to be that good. And so am I really going to subject myself to learning and memorizing a shmup that I don't really like? So I decided to ease up on that requirement, but I tried to make the playthrough decent at least, right? One or 2 credits, maybe. Yeah, 1 or 2. I don't think I'll go 3 credits. I'd replay it at that point. See right there, the part where the green anime girl put on screen? That was me activating my level 4. And the DNA looking beams, that's my level 2. And then with that green flashing, I hadn't explained it earlier, but I should explain it now. This game doesn't have bombs necessarily, but it has this sort of pseudo bomb you can use where it doesn't damage anything, but it cancels the bullets on the screen into spirits that you can gather from meter. And it also, it's basically a panic move you can use to save your life. So there we go. The first run through RefRain. This ship, the third ship, this green one, is definitely the most powerful, definitely the strongest. I don't think there's any arguing that. And so if you get into the game, you want to just get a quick clear, play ship 3, because these next 2 ships I'm going to demonstrate are not as strong. So here we go. This is what you get. And again, I haven't paid too close of attention to this game's story. That's really not my thing. But you get the feeling that the game is telling you, no, this is not the true ending. To get the true ending, you have to play basically the expert mode. See, it's talking about the computer. So again, I believe you're fighting some kind of AI system. Kind of like Ghost in the Shell meets the Matrix. Pretty cool idea. I like it, I can dig it. So overall, if you've sat through the review so far, I'm hoping you're enjoying it. I have to be honest here. This has been the hardest review I've had to do. I don't know what it is about this game, but I've had to re-record this review 5 times now. It's just something about it. I don't know what it is. It's elusive, even when reviewed. So now I'm just showing you the different UIs. One feature I need to talk about that is noticeably missing in this game is there is no stage select. Even after you beat the game, there's no way to just play a certain stage or just play certain bosses. You gotta run your way through the whole game again every time. And to me, that is this game's biggest flaw. Its biggest problem. That's awesome. That's a level 2. This is the default ship, and even though I think it's really badass, it just isn't nearly as powerful as that green ship I was using. So I decided I'm not going to play through the entire game with these other 2 ships. I'm just going to hop through the magic of video editing into stage 3, as you can see here, and just demonstrate what the ship can do a little bit. But anyway, getting back to the topic at hand, the lack of stage select is, for me, this game's biggest flaw, especially since it has a tutorial mode, it has a replay mode, which is becoming less and less common with shmups, but no stage select? And I did everything, I looked everywhere in the game to see if maybe it was just hard to find, but unless it's unlockable or something, I don't think there is a stage select. And the game's mean because it kind of teases you like there might be, because after you clear arcade mode and you go back to play it, the option to start arcade mode has these little backgrounds of stages, and it'll switch the names of the stages. Like it'll scroll through them and say stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, stage 5. So initially I thought, oh, this is like Super Mario Bros. Power-up block style in Super Mario World. You know how to have the different power-ups and you have to time it to get the power-up you want. Like maybe you have to press enter on the stage you want to go to, so when it scrolls to stage 3, you hit it on stage 3 and you go to stage 3. No, it just takes you to stage 1 no matter what you do. So I guess the only saving grace as far as this stage select issue in this game is that there is a stage restart option, which is nice, which is useful, but I really wish they had had a stage select. So what stage restart is let's say I melt down and lose 3 lives right here, but I don't want to replay the game. You can press start, and then you can restart the stage how you entered it. So that's nice. But that means if you want to practice the final boss, you have to fly through the first 4 stages to get to him to practice him. And if you don't press start at the right time, like if you kill him before you press start, then you can't restart the level. You have to redo everything again. So speaking specifically about Ship 1, I think the way its supers look are awesome. Its greatest weakness, though, is just comes down to its defense. It does not have the defense. It has the offense. Maybe not as strong as the third ship, because the third ship's just the strongest and has the best defense. This one's kind of in the middle, where it has solid offense, okay defense. With the options, you can kind of place them and defend yourself with them, but its super is not a missile. That it's like a concentrated shot, but it's only one concentrated shot, so it's really hard to use to cancel bullets the same way. It does work canceling bullets, it's just the hitbox is much smaller and the amount of bullets it cancels is greatly reduced. Yeah, so when I play ship 1, I tend not, unlike the third ship where I use a lot of the level 1 shot, this one I tend to use level 2. It cancels bullets on the screen better and is stronger. So here we go. So now I'm gonna switch over and show you the third ship of this game. One cool aspect of RefRain, as you notice, is the ships are very distinct from each other, and this is the most unique ship I have ever seen in a shmup. You need to check this thing out. So that's its laser. It's this close quarters barrier around you attack. And also you notice these options spinning. So when you enter your beam, and that's the level 2 or level 3, one of them. It's a super. But whenever you activate your beam, you see those spinning options? They'll form a circle around the area that you pressed the beam button in, and you can use them, and they'll automatically attack whatever's in their circle. And another interesting thing about this ship is that its movement speed is insanely fast. We're talking C gain here, or ABC gain, maybe even faster. It's a very quick ship, but not completely unyieldy either. So when you look at the ship and all the things it can do, your immediate impression is, wow, this is an OP ship. This ship is like the best one, or the one for experts, or the one for people who really know the game system and maybe know how to abuse the meter. And I think that's what the developer was going for, but unfortunately that is not the case. This ship, B ship, the red little ship, is clearly the worst ship in the game, and it is fun to play but also extremely frustrating because it's too underpowered. I think when they were balancing this ship, they obviously, with what it can do, there was a great likelihood for it just being completely OP, but in order to avoid that, I think they nerfed the ship, or whatever. These are fighting game terms, but they underpowered the ship too much. That beam you see there that looks so badass and intimidating is greatly weaker than the the green ship or the blue ship. Like, even point blanking the enemy, it does way less damage. To the point where even if you can point blank most enemy bosses, you can't kill them before their timer runs out. And then the options that form a circle around you, like these, on these smaller enemies they seem extremely effective, but against bosses and stuff, they might as well be doing nothing. Their damage is completely minuscule. But I thought maybe the point of this ship, though, is to just build meter and to basically just try and stay alive and defeat enemies using your supers, like here. But, hate to say it, your supers are extremely underpowered too. So look at what happens here with this boss. I've got him in the ring here. I go up and point blank him a bunch, I'm hitting him with as many supers as I can, but I'm pretty sure, despite all my efforts, I cannot kill him in time. I will say though that level 1 alternate attack, whatever you call it, super attack, where it has the claw come out, that has excellent defense, but crap offense. Okay, see, that doesn't damage those. See, that's what I was thinking, is this ship must come down to meter, but no, I just got timed out. And it happens with bosses over and over and over again. Look at this. I'm point blanking those 3 squares. Nothing. It takes forever to kill them. And look, he just flies right through my beam. So, sadly, as much as I love this ship and as much as I would play it if it was balanced the way it needs to be, it's just too underpowered. There's no tricks that I could find to make it work well. I mean, obviously you probably could still clear the game with it, but it just would be a lot more fun if they powered it up a little bit. Especially since it's a really cool concept of having a more melee style, up close and personal style ship in a shmup. It's just the balance of the ship is too weak. So as we get near the end of this review, I think I should do a quick summary of the points that I think are excellent about this game, the cons, and maybe give my final thoughts. So, the pros of this game are definitely the visual design, outside of the kind of bland enemy patterns, or enemy designs, is completely top notch. I love the style. It's really unique. The kind of Tron, Cyberpunk, Ghost in the Shell is, you know, something I would like to see more of in indie shmups for sure. And huge props to the, you know, developer for using 3D models where possible. I think that's harder to pull off than a lot of people would think. So that's really awesome. And they don't look cheap and cheesy. They look really well done. The playability of this game is fantastic. The UI, getting it set up, is a little bit homebrewish, I would say, because you're doing all your configuring outside the game in a menu. But the way that menu works is really intuitive and really simple. It only takes a few seconds and you're ready to go, so not a problem. Oh, I was able to defeat that boss, thank God. The music, I haven't touched on the music very much, but the music in this game is absolutely stellar. So now I'm warping to the final boss battle, in case you're wondering. Every track in this game is really strong, really fun to listen to. Like, there's many times, especially in stage 3 and 4, where I was just kind of nodding my head to the beat. It's like dancey electronic, but also it's got some substance to it, so excellent done soundtrack. One of my favorite ones so far that I've heard in a shmup. In an indie shmup at least. The backgrounds in this game are absolutely excellent. The ship sprites themselves look excellent. Look awesome. Unique and interesting. Every single one of them. The enemy design, as far as the patterns, the balance of the game is really well done. It's not overly difficult, it's not overly easy. And of course you can, as you get better at the game, there are modes to increase the difficulty. It has some unique aspects like the hit scans, the beams, the cinematic transitions that make the game really stand out in your memory. The visual presentation of the bullet patterns themselves too is hypnotic at times. I mean, look at this one. Like, it reminds you of when you turn on Windows Media Player and it has that little strobe stuff flying around to your music. It kind of reminds me of that. So, what are the cons of this game? the first and biggest one is there's no stage select, and you can't use the replay function to select stages. Some shmups do that, this one doesn't do that. The only, I guess, option you have in that area is stage restart, which I think is passable but barely. So that's the game's biggest flaw for sure. It needs a stage select because it has excellent features like tutorial, it has replay function. It's very weird that it didn't include a stage select of any kind. It has different arrangements too, and different difficulty options. Another con is the bland enemy like visuals. A lot of them are, not all of them, but a lot of them are just circles and squares, and the bosses are just satellites. I guess my final con that comes to my mind is the C ship, or the B, this red ship here. Everything about it screams awesome, but it just wasn't balanced correctly. It needed to be strengthened a little bit to make it fun, because as you'll notice, I gave that boss my all and I got timed out on the last boss and was unable to even fight the true form of it. So yeah, that ship could use some adjusting for sure, which I guess is in the realm of possibility, right? A patch could happen. I don't know if it ever will, but a patch definitely possible. And really the two things that just need to be addressed realistically are the stage select and that ship. So finally, I wanted to end off with some technical information about the game. And as you can see here, this is me doing a lag test. And this game has only 2 frames of input lag. And for a PC shmup that's not being emulated and using run ahead, that is downright amazing. So only 2 frames of input lag. That's really the best you could ask for in this type of release. So that's a huge bonus too, because a lot of these newer shmups coming out, especially I think the ones using Unity, they're lagging on you. They're up, some of them are up to 4 frames. This one though, just 2 frames. This game is very well done. You could tell it's a work of quality and passion, and definitely for my rating of it, I give it a 4 out of 5. It is a recommended play, a recommended buy for sure, especially since it's, lesser known. It's not a highly common game. So definitely check it out. My only gripes with it that are the stage 1 is an issue too, especially since there's no stage select. You are just kind of wasting a lot of time in stage 1, so. But other than that, extremely solid shmup overall. Definitely worth your time. Thanks very much for watching.